You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson, and this is my show, Author to Author. Today, I'm with Dave Basconi, and we're going to be talking about his book, Nonsense to Horse Sense, How Horses Tell Us the Truth About Ourselves and How to Live. Hi, Dave. How are you tonight?
Doing well, Cynthia. How are you?
I'm good. No complaints.
Good.
I'm glad that we're finally able to connect.
Yes, it's taken a while, but it did work out. I'm happy.
Yes. Would you like to start us with prayer?
Yes. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Father, thank you for allowing us to be together. Please bless our discussion. May we be a source of learning for anyone listening. Thank you for bringing horses into my life so that I can talk about one of your greatest works. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. So this is definitely different from the other books that I have interviewed people on. So I was wondering if you could tell me, maybe we could just start by you telling me what it is that led you to write this book.
Well, actually, I ended up writing it as Plan B. Plan A was for someone else to write it, and I think she's well known in Catholic circles, Dr. Rhonda Chervin.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. That was my scheme, and that I had met Rhonda over at Holy Apostles, and we were together for, I was showing up there on Sunday afternoons for about, I don't know, maybe a year, and but she announced that she was going to be retiring and leaving Holy Apostles, and I also knew that she had written about 60 books at that point, and so I'm thinking, well, this thought of writing about my experience with horses was getting, something it kept coming back. And when I heard about her retiring, in quotes, retiring, I thought maybe she would be the perfect person to write it. And I had the facts. She had the writing skills, so there's the perfect combination. So when I ran it by her, I got a little bit of a surprise answer, and she said, I'm tired of writing. You write it, I'll help. And never thought about that because my background is engineering. I really wasn't that fond of writing, and over my career I'd written memos, but they were more technical memos, at the workplace. So anyhow, I said, okay, well, let's give it a shot here. And sure enough, the other thing I should mention is that she knew Sebastian, and so I made contact with him about what was going on, and he said, write something. So I did, and it was just, some random thoughts about this whole thing. I hadn't really formed any kind of a structure to it. And so after a few submittals, he said, okay, maybe we can work together on this. So that was the green light, and so I wrote several chapters, what ended up being chapters, and Rhonda critiqued them, and she gave me some really good guidance. It was just one of those things where the thoughts were there, but they were not really well structured, and she put me on the right path. So so once I got the template in place, I felt much more comfortable in writing it. Someone who was a professional writer had looked at it and thought it was, worth talking about. And so that's how the book came about. My thoughts about the lessons I had learned at the barn from my horses, I thought were needed in the time that we were living in. The book was written back in 2017 to 2018. And so, you know, there were plenty of things that would concern someone even back then. I think it's maybe even more now today. But so I thought, well, let's. It seems to make sense to me. Let's see if someone else might maybe can learn from it. And so that's the backstory on how the book actually came about. It was because of Sebastian and Rhonda being in the right place at the right time.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I may have run across you at some point at Holy Apostles if you were visiting Rhonda, because we were both there at the same time. It's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It was a good idea to have her kind of edit your work as opposed to her writing it, just because I would almost put this in the realm of memoir, because you're writing about things that you've learned over time, and it's hard for someone else to really understand what's going on in another person's life, even when you tell them. I'm a memoirist. That's why I picked up on that. So I think she was wise to do that. So, although I imagine you got a little anxious.
Well, you know, I never thought of it in those terms. That's an excellent point. But I will say, once I got some confidence after you know some submittals to Sebastian, and then having Rhonda take a look at it, and you know, getting some structure to it, that it became enjoyable. It was work, that's for sure. I've known people in my past experiences. They're natural. I mean, the words just flow right onto the paper. That's not me. I have to struggle. But if I keep looking at it enough and cleaning it up enough, it's then at least maybe worthy of being edited, which, you know, further they can take out the imperfections at that point, but it's, at least it has something there for them to look at.
Yes, I agree. So that's good. So you have a lot of chapters. That's, you know, so a lot of different stories. I'm just looking through here. I mean, you've got really 46 chapters. That's impressive.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Being an engineer, I always knew that you had to, you know, any project that you got, you had to look at all the parameters involved in the project. I will say my technical training did serve me well in even this, which is not really technical the way we think of it. You know, an engineer is usually with the math and the science. But early on, I'm thinking, okay, who am I writing for? And I came up with, let's write a book. It's an easy read. It'll be written for teenage and up. And I say it that way because my thinking was a teenager could read the book, the parents could read it, and the grandparents could read it. So that, and they would all get something different from it because of their level of maturity.
Right.
You know, the teenager would hopefully see it as an interesting horse story and some morals and some values. And the parent would see that plus more, you know, read more into it. And the grandparents, I think, might even see even more into it. Because the other thing that I tried to do was keep the book non-political and non-religious, even though, you know, Rhonda taught at Catholic universities, but her testimonial on the back of the book talks about natural law ethics. She, I thought, did a good job of, you know, making a statement about the book, and so she put it into the proper framework, and she represented the one end of the age spectrum, and then the other testimonial Cecilia Anderson, she was 13, I think, at the time. So the two testimonials on the back of the book spanned the age range, which was good. And like I said, I tried to write it so it was non-political and non-religious. However, people hopefully could see something that could be related to a religious theme. I used the word values instead of virtues again, and that was by design. The values wouldn't offend anyone, whereas maybe virtues might. I don't know, but once again, that was the starting point for writing the book. And also the chapters are very short, so it keeps it as an easy read.
Right.
So that's why the book looks the way it does.
Yeah, I like the idea of the short chapters because, especially if someone who's younger is reading it, they can read one chapter a night before they go to bed and they're only looking at, 3 or 4 pages, 5 pages. And that certainly, would give them something to read over a long period of time, and they'd be able to pick up the lessons and the information, the morals that you're giving them in a stepwise fashion.
Yeah, and that did happen. Actually, there was at least a couple of people that told me, and I couldn't believe this. Well, I can believe it because the total amount of time needed to read the book, from cover to cover, is about 2 hours. If you're the average adult, average reading speed, I think about 2 hours. I did have a couple of people tell me that they picked up the book and they read the whole thing, all the way through. And they said they just didn't put it down. They just kept reading. And so, it was for anyone who only had 5 minutes a night to read it. They could probably cover it in 2 or 3, maybe 3 weeks. Whereas someone that had the time and wanted to just keep going, they could plow right through it in a couple of hours. So it was designed to be an easy read in so many different ways that I was new in the book business, so I thought at least don't write something that it's going to turn people off. At least give yourself a chance to be read.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those people that likes living with a book. So, I tend to pick something up and I only read a little bit of it every day. And that way I can, I don't know, I call it living with the book. It's like it goes around inside my head, and then I read some more of it and it just adds to it.
Yes,
but,
yeah. And I tend to read books. I like philosophy, theology, things like that. I don't bother with fiction. That's just me. I know a lot of people enjoy it. It's very relaxing for them. But some books that I get, I don't even read them from, chapter by chapter. I'll skip to a section of the book because you can do that with that kind of a book. So some books I'll say I've read, but I've read maybe 60% of it just because of the way I do it. And then I'll pick up another book. And because sometimes there's overlap. If you have 2 or 3 different authors talking about the same thing, you'll start to recognize the overlap. And so I can either skip that, or if it's something that is a little bit not appealing, I'll just move on to the next chapter. But it's not a fiction book. It's not like you got to keep track of the characters or anything. This is philosophy or theology, and a lot of things can stand alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for this book. This book was meant to be read from, start with chapter 1 and run to chapter 46. But you could, but like I said, it's I think more interesting and makes more sense if you read the whole thing. But anyhow, that's kind of the backstory on how the book came about and the thinking behind it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So start telling us some of the content that, I think people will be very interested to hear some of that.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the chapters, some of the titles of the chapters. And, I started out the book with my early years and then getting my first horse and setting up the barn and everything. But one chapter that is the shortest chapter in the book, I'll just turn to it. It's on page 27, and you have the book in front of you.
Yes, I do. Let me just get there.
Okay. Actually, it's not the shortest chapter. It's the chapter titled Two Questions, and it starts out with, is there nonsense in your life? Is there nonsense in the world? Those are the two questions. And I've got to tell you, I've asked that question at horse shows because there's been some book signings. I went to a horse show a few years back, and there was a booth there that basically was a bookstore. And I showed the lady the book, and she goes, yeah, let's do this. So I've done some book signing, and when I ask that question to people that come by, we kind of get into a discussion, and every person, without exception, has answered yes, not to one of the questions, but to both of the questions. There's nonsense in their life and in the world. And so that is an easy way to get into a discussion about the book. And when you're at a horse show, all the people there are already horse lovers. That's a given. So, and they're there looking for different kinds of books. Some of them are, training and writing and all that. But this book does offer them something a little different. And, we've sold some copies, just having a good discussion there. But the other chapter I was talking about that was the shortest chapter is the one that follows. And the title of that chapter is Definition. And that's where I define nonsense. Again, the title of the book is Nonsense to Horse Sense. So I define nonsense based on my observations. And I'll just read it. We'll give away one of the chapters here. Nonsense, that which diminishes harmony. And I kind of came to grips with that definition with going to the barn and going down there maybe stressed out a little bit, and then finding that after just a few minutes with the horses, I was relaxed and my head was clear, and I could start to think through things. And I think that's really why the book was written, was because I had one leg in the horse world and one leg in the philosophy, theology world, and I'm starting to kind of make a connection there, that what I'm learning from my horses really does follow what some of the greatest minds have been telling us all along, the philosophers, the theologians, and it just seemed to be a natural. And so that's once again is how this whole thing came about. Someone asked me, why did you write it? And I think sometimes people are all in one side. They're either all horse-related, and they tend to write horse books, or they're more, moral, philosophy, theology-related, and they tend to write books like that. This book kind of spans the two. It tries to connect the two, and I think that's one of the ways I came up with the nonsense definition, that which diminishes harmony, because I don't think the two coexist. If you've got more of one, you've got less of the other. And I've run that by a few people, and I've not had anybody challenge me on that. So we'll try that with you. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so, but then, go ahead, Cynthia.
Oh, I just, I was thinking harmony to me. I usually think of just peace. Harmony reminds me of peace. And it would be impossible to have that if there's nonsense involved.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Like polar opposites or something.
Pardon me?
They're like polar opposites.
Yeah, exactly. If you have more of one, you have less of the other.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind the book is, what's the source of the nonsense? And if we can find the source and start to, remedy that, then we should be bringing more harmony into the world. And it really does get down to on an individual basis. You can't expect, this isn't something that's done by institutions, it's done by individuals. And individuals go and work in or form institutions. So if you're sending nonsense people into the institutions, that's what you get, is nonsense. If you can send some people that understand harmony or, into these institutions, I think that's also what you get. So it's really important to understand this on the individual level.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So anyhow, I'll move along. The book really gets down to some of the basics. If someone just wants to learn about horses, they can certainly, I think, learn some things. And you don't have to be a horse person. Again, I wrote the book in such a way that a horse person would enjoy it because of them being able to relate to what I'm talking about. But the non-horse person would learn some things. And I love to learn about other things. I love learning. I think that's the appeal to the kind of books I read. And so I think you don't have to be a horse person. You can come away with some things. And then the values that are talked about in the book, I think, apply across the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and I'm looking at some other chapters here. Survival. Here's what got me going on how the horses. Let me give you some maybe insight into how the horses came up with some of my definitions. Horses are prey animals. And they've been around for millions of years. So as a prey animal, they've had to live truth in the wild. They can't fake it. They can't cover their eyes and say, I don't see the predator. The sight, the sound, or the smell of a predator, those are the cold, hard facts. And that's the truth. And so you have to live it. And that's what I found so interesting about horses. They've lived a certain way. They've lived truth. And because of that, they're still with us after millions of years. And if we are to get rid of the nonsense, we have to find the truth as well. I mean, you can't be living these falsehoods and expect things to work out in the long run. A horse that adopted our nonsense, hers wouldn't be around for very long because nonsense in the wild gets you killed. And that's how the horses being, living with the truth, in the truth, is what inspired me to try to get that point across in a way that wasn't, threatening to anyone, but hopefully, trying to get people to open their eyes to something that would make our societies better in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And I sent you an article that I wrote.
Yes.
Do you have that by any chance?
I do. I'm just going to have to find it. Let me see if I'm going to put your name in here. It'll just take me a second.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's it's one page, right?
Yeah, it starts with last fall. Cynthia, would you do me a favor? I've been doing all the talking. I usually like in a conversation, back and forth. So would you do me a favor and maybe read that that article? And before you do, let me just tell the audience what it's about. After I wrote the book, I started thinking about some things beyond the book. The book actually caused me to think about some of the things I was talking about. I don't know, maybe other authors do that. Do you do that? You make some points, and when you start to think them through a little bit, you find even more to talk about. Does that happen to you or other authors?
Yes. I think it does. And what I do is, as I'm writing, I have a pad of paper that's not what I'm writing on, and I just list things if I realize that I want to include them.
Yeah, but you're talking about in the same book. See, this occurred to me after the book was published, and the article. Oh, yeah. This isn't part of the book. What happened? Yeah, here's what happened. Many years ago, I wrote a few letters to the local newspaper. They have this column, letters to the editor, and people can, write about current events. And I had a few letters published. And so after the book was published, I decided to just, send them a little article. And it had to be short. I think it was limited to 200 words. And that's why, as you start off reading it, it's not part of the book. It was an article or a letter written to a newspaper talking about the book. And, if there was ever a second book, then maybe this could be part of it. But anyhow, go ahead and read it, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. Last fall, the book Nonsense to Horse Sense was published about lessons learned after bringing horses into my life. I believe these natural law insights, if modeled, would make us better people. The book touches upon justice, that elusive, intangible, every society desires. Today, justice is laws and courts, the means used when higher values have been abandoned. It is man-made and only a substitute for the real thing. True justice is as organic as our will to survive and comes about when the truth of survival is understood and lived. To put things in perspective, a functioning community with 10 laws is stronger and more just than if it needed 100 laws. If in time 1,000 laws were needed, then that community has deteriorated to the point of collapse. What happened? How did we get here? Well, bad paths lead to bad places. A society that invents truth is inferior to a society that seeks truth. Invented truth is the path on which 10 becomes 1,000. For justice, we must put aside egos and politics. Justice follows living basic survival truths we were designed to live. Horses got it right eons ago. Why can't we?
Thank you. I enjoyed your reading. You read it better than me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, why don't you critique it? These were my thoughts as an extension of the book, and so I know we're catching you cold here, but
no, that's okay. I'm a teacher. I get caught cold a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're ready.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes. I like it. So, I understand the natural law insights and what I get from that. I mean, obviously horses don't live by natural law, but they live according to how they were created. And so, yes. So natural law for us, I mean, it's not an instinct, but it is in our heart, helping us to decide to do right and avoid evil, to do the correct thing always. The problem, of course, is we don't always know what the correct thing is. But so I believe these natural law insights from the horse book could make people better. Yeah, I understand that, because I think it wouldn't do us any harm to see how other creatures live according to how God made them. And we, of course, with original sin, don't.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, so our nature is damaged, even though we are now redeemed. Justice, so that is intangible. I don't know that I'd actually agree with it being in laws and courts. I mean, there is a justice to give to each person what is their due, and I think that the laws and the courts come in when that isn't done. So it's an attempt to remedy injustice as opposed to being a place of justice. To me, that's just how I'm reacting.
Mm-hmm.
True justice, to do the right thing, that is to give to each person its due, or, if you want to spread it further than just people, to treat creation even the way that God made us to treat creation. That's organic, and I believe that you're correct, because we want it. We always want it for ourselves. Unfortunately, we don't always want it for others. It's an issue. But if we were to follow through on it, if we were to actually really try to live a just life as a society, so the truth of survival would be understood and lived, and, there'd be a lot less disagreement. I definitely agree with this next paragraph. So if you have 10 laws and the community is functioning, and then you have 100 laws because it wasn't functioning after a while with 10, so you had to add more, and then you did 1,000 laws because even the 100 didn't work, that's true. The community has deteriorated. I don't know if it would be as far as to the point of collapse. I don't know what the tipping point would be there. But 10 times 10 is 100, and 10 times 100 is 1,000. So there's quite an exponential increase in the need for law.
In other words, people aren't following natural law.
Right.
And so the society is putting out man-made laws to try to control behavior. That's really what that's all about.
Yeah, and I think also that people are trying to follow their conscience, but they don't form it. So their conscience has become, it's become their opinion, or the opinion of someone in the state or in the news that has formed their opinion. So therein lies the problem. Let's see. So what happened? Bad paths lead to bad places. That's true. And this is priceless. A society that invents truth is inferior to a society that seeks truth. Yeah, I mean that's because if you invent truth, it's not truth. It's just something that people agree is true. Like, when we look at something like, you can have a certain sex organs, but you decide really you belong to a different sex. I mean, that's not truth. That's invention.
Yeah,
so, and I think that's a really good example.
Cynthia, that was a excellent comment you made earlier about people have opinions, but they are not well formed. Actually, I talk about that in the book, and if you'll go to chapter 42, I can read a few paragraphs that addresses that. And to kind of set it up, the chapter puts us in a coffee shop. We're having a discussion, and I'm waiting for you so that we can later have a discussion about our design. But let me read the portion of the chapter that addresses opinions and the need for them to be well-formed. Do you have the page, thanks for page 173 there. Do you have it there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It goes like this. I want to have a meaningful conversation. I'm not interested in your opinions, nor should you be interested in mine. However, I am very interested in your well-formed opinions, just as you should be in my well-formed opinions. We'll see how this goes. Could be short. Well-formed opinions are based on the facts that take time and effort to know and understand, not hearsay or something picked out of the noise. Well-formed opinions are searching for the truth about things. I would like to offer the following to illustrate the difference between opinions and well-formed opinions. You'll see why it matters. In college, I took aerodynamics, an upper-level engineering course. My first job upon graduation was with a company that designed and built jet engines for commercial and military aircraft. After 16 months, I took another job with a much smaller company in a different industry. I changed jobs a few times after that as well. During my career, I have taken numerous flights under a wide variety of weather conditions. Based on the above, I have an opinion on how to fly an airplane. Now, here is the question for you to answer. On your next flight, do you want me flying the plane or someone that has training and experience? Say, someone referred to as a pilot. Do you want an opinion, me, or a well-formed opinion, pilot, at the controls? If you choose me, free cocktails for everyone, you'll need them. Unfortunately, another source of nonsense today is the abundance of opinions out there. We're flying with opinions at the controls. So anyhow, I think that is such a serious topic. Is when someone engages in conversation, and when you want to express an opinion, it should be well-formed. It shouldn't just be something based on emotion or something that you've gotten from a single source. It should be well-researched. And I really think that's a major problem in today's society.
I agree.
Yeah. What do you find in your travels that you run into with well-formed and just opinions? I'd be interested in hearing your take on that.
Well, of course, as a theologian, I hear a variety of things where people are saying things like, well, God will understand, God will forgive me, but there's no idea about going to confession on a regular basis or making sure that you're in a state of grace. So, that's obviously a serious spiritual one. But since COVID came, I'm kind of surprised at the number of people who have the opinion that it's all a hoax, a political hoax. And yet we have evidence of, ICUs being full and people dying. We see this on the news every night. We see the numbers. And it's like, no, the belief is still that it's just a political hoax. So, there's opinion, which is something driven by politics or by overconfidence in God's mercy. And then there's, the well-formed opinion of someone, a scientist or a medical professional on COVID, or, a priest or a theologian or a sister on what happens if you are unrepentant about mortal sin. So, in both cases, there's opinion and well-formed opinion.
Yeah, and in your comment there, you used the word mercy, God's mercy. I mentioned earlier before the show that I was doing a podcast with another lady, and we talked about mercy and justice. One of the things that came up was that when you walk away from God's mercy, I think you walk into God's justice. And I think that's one is turning to God, God's mercy, and one is turning away from God, which would be God's justice. And the example we talked about in our discussion was the prodigal son. The second son decided to go out on his own. He received his share of the inheritance. He left what I would consider the mercy of his father. He had a good life, comfortable life, and he went out and squandered everything and was, had no food, was starving, and he walked into justice. However, he did change his mind after thinking about it, and he went back to receive mercy. He asked for forgiveness, and he received mercy. And I think that's where we are today. We have to be really careful about some of these decisions we're making because they have far-reaching effects.
Oh, yeah. In some cases, eternal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, God is both just and merciful. But what you have to do if you've done something wrong, obviously you have to be aware that you've done something wrong and know that it's wrong and have done it deliberately. There's all those requirements. But, you can't be under duress, anything like this. But so you have to say you're sorry, and you have to mean it. And that's the access to mercy. God is always there with his hand out ready to give you the graces. But sometimes we just say, well, give me the graces anyway, and that's just not how it works. But,
exactly.
And, fortunately God is so merciful that he will give you your mercy on the deathbed. But, that's kind of risky, and I've heard of people in the old days, you hear of people that would wait until the deathbed to confess sin, but sometimes they died before they confessed it, So, yeah.
I heard something about that. It said, if you recall, about waiting till the 11th hour. Have you heard that phrase? Yeah, well, they say some people that wait till the 11th hour, they die at 10:30.
That's right.
So you're a half hour late. And that makes all the difference in the world, So.
Yeah, and it's kind of a weird thing because if you're waiting like that because you want to, you have more attraction to your sin than you do to God, and the only reason that you're waiting because you don't want to give that up, then it's like what you're really trying to do is avoid hell. It's not that you want to be with God; you just don't want to go to hell. So, there's all kinds of issues with that way of thinking. Unfortunately, a great many people, I believe, I don't know for sure, but I think a great many people do operate on that level.
Yeah, and that's not only, but that's also a form of manipulation, and I think God can see through that. If we can see through manipulation, God can. He knows what's in our hearts. And I think you're playing with fire, no pun intended,
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But anyhow, getting back to the book, the title is Nonsense to Horse Sense. There's so much nonsense in the world, and I just think we need some good old-fashioned horse sense to clean it up. And horses live in the truth. They live in reality, and that is so necessary for us because, living in the truth is a form of humility. If you are the problem in your own life, you need to own up to that. That's a form. That's a form of humility. You have to be humble, and that's hard for a lot of people, I think.
I agree. Pride is a problem.
No, I think it's like one of the most it's probably the highest sin on the list there, isn't most people get into trouble with pride? Isn't that the sin that causes the most problems for people?
It sure causes a lot of them. No question about it. So
yes. But
elevated sense of worth,
Yeah, and so the book was, and as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, it was written to kind of talk about things in the natural, but people could relate to the supernatural. I think maybe not so much the younger crowd, but the older folks. They could see the parallels between what I've learned from my horses and trying to present it in a easygoing way. It's not political. It's not religious, but just put it out there as this is just kind of common sense, common horse sense, if you will. And I think people that are looking in a spiritual way at life, they could make the connection between my comments and what they're looking for on their own.
Yeah. So I think that it's really a good analogy that you've got there, because when you're looking at how any animal, I mean in your case you're looking at horses, how they live in their natural world. Well, for us, our nature is both here on earth natural, but we also are supernatural. We're physical and spiritual. Right. And so, that's something that we should be taking into account. And people have a sense of that, but they don't want guidance a lot of times. They want to go on their own thoughts. So, you have people who say, well, I have God inside of me, and it's that divine spark, but it really has nothing to do with God as we in the Catholic world think of him or worship him. And we have other people who think, that really we're just animals, we're just more highly evolved than the chimpanzees, and they actually compare us to chimpanzees because they say that they are our closest relatives. So it's like there's a lack of awareness of what we are and an understanding of it that you're not going to get in the animal world. They know what they are. We don't often. Yeah.
Matter of fact, what you're saying, I just read something about, and it goes back centuries, this thinking, that we're just material, that we just happen to come about because a bunch of atoms happen to be in the right place at the right time. But when you take the spiritual, when you take God out of it, it basically just becomes such a sterile environment. I think the example used was that there's really someone who thinks that way is likely to think there's no difference between a pile of rocks and some building that was built from stone 2,000 years ago, a beautiful structure that was designed, and the architecture is just gorgeous, and it's lasted 2,000 years, and we still admire it. There's really no difference between that and a pile of stones if it's just a bunch of atoms clashing or coming together to form material, and we have no soul, and it's just it's just sterile. I mean, I don't. I think when you start to ask some of the deeper questions, that falls short. That immediately falls short. You have to get to the supernatural before things start to really make sense if you're seeking truth.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it also, to believe that we just are material flies in the face of logic. I mean, the thought process is not material. The brain is not the intellect. The
right.
intellect is spiritual.
Right.
So we're not just physical. And also our concept of future. I'm always, we're in time. We know that God created space and time at the same instant, I guess we'd say. I was going to say at the same time, but that kind of messes things up, doesn't it? But anyway, when he created one, he created the other. And, so when you think about that, we live in time, but we're always, really, in a sense, we're always in the future, because just when I started, the beginning of this sentence is now the past, So the present and, the present and the future, and it's like, well, I believe we live that way, that we live that with that awareness of the future, because it's an awareness that we don't end. Now, I don't think I'm formulating the statement properly, but it's like we're always looking forward. And when we're closer to death, even long before Christ came, when there was, more primitive religions, people were looking as to what's the next step, whether they were going to be going down to the river Styx or, whatever. But they had this idea, we continue. And so to deny the spirit and think we're just physical is just silly.
It is, and you touched on two things that I'd like to just comment on quickly. One is the will and the intellect, or the higher powers of the soul.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
they're not physical; they're the soul. And your comment on time, I have thought about that. And St. Augustine, in the book Confessions, have you read that?
Oh, yeah.
He does touch on that, and he talks about it, and it's been a little while since I've read that. But one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, and he was the one that inspired that book, Confessions, was that the future and the past really don't exist, because we can't change anything there. The future is what we expect, and the past is in our memory. So the only moment that we have is
the present.
Yes, but how long does the present last? And that was
not even a millisecond.
Oh, well, I think the only word that applies is an instant. And an instant, in my definition, would be you can't measure it. It's such a short interval of time that you can't measure it. So what really is happening here, if you think about it, and here's the engineer coming out in me, is if you think of the present as a very thin membrane, the thickness is that of an instant. And this membrane is where the future flows into the past. Again, I've tried to put it in physical terms so that I could, if I got into a discussion with someone and you just opened the door for it, think of this as a membrane. That there's the futures and the past. The two are connected through this instant that I would refer to as a membrane, and the future flows through this membrane into the past, and that membrane is the present. And it is such, it's amazing, because when I started this sentence or this discussion, that's already in the past. And what we're going to talk about here in another few seconds is in the future. And
but not for long.
It's amazing. When you start to think about things like that, you simply cannot find answers in the natural. It has to go into the supernatural, and there has to be this first cause. And I'm sure that's another whole discussion. But this first cause that we call God.
I know.
So anyhow. it's quite a leap from nonsense to horse sense.
No, but it does make sense. It does make sense because the comparison of something that can only live in the natural world as opposed to us, because it is only natural, it is only physical. I mean, obviously it's alive, it has animal spirit, but we have souls, you know, a rational soul. So, you know, it's an interesting distinction. I often wonder if animals, when they look at us, see or sense that we're different, or think that we're just big animals. You know,
well,
you know.
I'm going to be honest with you. Horses have a sixth sense about them, and I talk about it in the book. If you're distressed, if you're in stress or angry or anxious or something, they'll pick up on that. And trust me, they're keen. Their senses are very keen. And the one thing that I think it was fortunate for me, anyhow, to use horses, because there are other prey animals. However, a horse is so big and so strong, you don't muscle a horse. You have to form a relationship, and in the book it's referred to as a partnership. So to be able to work with a horse, you have to form a partnership. So you can't just force your will upon them. I mean, I don't think of our barn cat, as a prey animal, because he is a predator. Just talk to the mice, and they'll tell you that. But here's the thing: when it's time for him to go to the vet, he doesn't like to get in the cat carrier. But guess what happened? I open the little door, and he goes in the cat carrier because I force my will upon him, and we go to the vet. However, you don't do that with a horse. You start to try to force your will on a horse, and you're going to find out real quick who's the stronger of the two. And so it takes that relationship that you have to form, that partnership, to be able to be safe and to work with a horse. And the fact that they're prey animals and have lived for millions of years is just, that was the best role, or the best, role model, I guess, that I could go to have this discussion about nonsense to horse sense, because of just all of the above factors.
Yeah. So it is interesting. It's an interesting comparison.
Yeah. But it's there. I mean, I'm sure other people could find other ways of doing the same thing. However, I think they would arrive at the same conclusion. I think when you're dealing with the facts or the truth, it always takes you to the same place. The fact that I used horses, somebody else could use something else, but they would arrive at the same place. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's because there's a lot of truth there, and people who are interested enough to look for truth will find it. They may not phrase it the same way, they may not find it in exactly the same way, but because truth is attractive to us. You know, we like to understand things, and by understanding, all we're really doing is looking for truth. What is the truth of this thing?
Right.
So, it's not surprising that we can come up with different comparisons. Different people come up with different comparisons as different ways of expressing the same thing. But I think that the horses, I think that's just interesting, because you are dealing with a very ancient animal, big. I mean, they don't have intellect as we do, but they're not stupid. They're smart,
Very smart, yes.
Scarily so. To me, they're too big to be around.
Well, that was the thing. That's why you got to form that partnership. You better have a good relationship with a horse, or you will get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a few scars and a few injuries from being around horses, but I accept that. That's part of the deal. and it was never their fault. It was my fault, and because I'm supposed to be the smart one, but when you get a little too lax, that's when things can happen. And but they have a way of reminding you, hey, we're not trying to hurt you, but just us being a horse, things can happen.
Yeah, yeah.
But well, I think we could really talk forever, but I know there is a limit. We don't want to wear listeners out with too many stories, but I think that our discussion has covered the book pretty well. And if anyone is interested, they can find the book on Sebastian's website, the En Route Books and Media. It is there. So, unless you have something else, I really think we've done a decent job of covering the book.
I agree, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it, including those people that are out there that like horses. I should tell you that the closest I've ever been to a horse was probably when I was 7 years old, and my parents paid a couple of dollars to this guy who owned a horse to put me on the horse in my cowgirl outfit. And I still have that picture, and I never got on a horse again.
Was it a scary experience, or was
I think it was, because I was little. I mean, I was 7, so I wasn't really tiny. Maybe 7, maybe 6, I don't know. But I remember looking up at it, and now when I look at the picture, I look at, well, it was a pony. It wasn't a big horse. But I never did get on one again. In fact, many years later, I was at the Grand Canyon where there's mules and donkeys and stuff, and, there's horses in the area. And I was just looking at them, and I was like, nope, not for me. Too big.
No, they're not for everybody.
No. Oh, I think they're beautiful. But they're, from a distance.
There you go. When there's a fence between you and the horse, they're gorgeous.
Yep, that's right.
Now, see, I think nothing of just going into the stalls with them, and I'm in there grooming them, whatever. There's all kinds of reasons for being in the same stall with them. But or if you go out in the paddock or on the pasture with them, I'm very comfortable. Matter of fact, I think I'm probably more comfortable around them than I would be some people, some strangers, because I know my horses. I don't know, and I know their heart. Whereas with some people, you're not quite sure sometimes. But
well, I'm under the impression most horses are not of ill. I mean, this is not the appropriate description, but they're not of ill will. Unless they're sick or something, they don't try to hurt people, right?
Well, no, I think if you have a horse that's a problem, they've been abused. And they were abused maybe early on, and they still have memories. Whereas one of my horses was born here, and he's the most gentle thing you can imagine. He's just because he was always, treated well, and he had other horses around him to teach him manners, and that's where they learn, is from the mares and the herd. And as long as the owner treats them well and with respect, you expect them to be disciplined, and but there's that, again, partnership coming into play, and you'll have a gentle horse. Matter of fact, the people that talk about gentle horses are the ones that have draft horses. Those are 2,000-pound horses.
Yeah,
and they talk
we
about
have them up here.
They talk about them as gentle giants. They're just amazing, and they're 2,000 pounds. It's twice the weight of my horses. But, So.
But we have many that you see up here that are draft horses. I live in Vermont, of course, and it's, although I'm in a city, Vermont City by normal standards is a small town, unless you're like in Burlington. So, you go out on the country roads and you'll see draft horses. There's also a tradition up here around Christmas where they have them pull Christmas carriages, It's very nice. Yeah. I watched that, but I'm about maybe 500 feet away. Of course, I suppose if a horse wanted to get to me real quick, 500 feet isn't much.
No.
Maybe I'll make it 1,000 feet.
Yeah. Maybe we need to give you an assignment. Maybe before in the next year, you have to actually get close enough to a horse that you could either pet them or feed them a carrot. Is that a challenge you're willing to take here?
No. Anyway, okay. Well, this has been a delightful interview, and it's a delightful book with a lot of good information in it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've enjoyed it as well. So, I know you like to close with a prayer. So
yes.
Why don't we close with that? Let's start. I'll start. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Cynthia. Take care, and I wish you the best.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.